So today I want to talk about perception. And have you ever noticed that when you watch different movies, you might feel triggered by different characters in the movie? Recently, me and my housemates got together and we watched the movie A Dangerous Method, which was about Freud and Jung and some of his colleagues and psychoanalysis and different psychological theories. And then we also watched One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, a famous 1975 movie about a guy who tried to escape a low-level prison sentence to go to a mental hospital instead to get out of working in the farms. So what I learned is that people have certain triggers to certain characters in certain movies based on their past experiences. For instance, in the first movie, A Dangerous Method, we had some people triggered by the woman who was a little bit psychotic, hysterical, and kind of tried to blackmail Carl Jung in a way because she was sleeping with him and he was married, tried to ruin his career and things like that. Some people were also triggered in the other movie, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, by the nurse who tried to enforce order in the mental asylum, and the maverick guy who brought in alcohol and prostitutes and tried to get everyone rowdy and like anarchy involved in the hospital. So there's a lot of things that triggered certain people, but some people weren't triggered by those things, and it really depends on your past and your perceptions that arose from past experiences. For instance, one guy was triggered by the woman who was trying to threaten Carl Jung's career with her affair, who was also bullied by a woman in his past. It was kind of crazy, and he thought. Me looking at it, I definitely saw that her actions weren't exactly correct. I mean, they were harmful to some people and very self-serving, but I also saw and understood why she did certain things, and also some good things about her. She had extraordinary psychological insights that were just beautiful. And Jung was the first one that, she was considered crazy. She was admitted to Jung as a patient, but Jung believed in her to be an analyst, to study psychology, and that gave her the confidence to really come into her talents. So that was beautiful. But the first point I want to make in this video is to pay attention to what characters trigger you in movies, and to see if that tells you something about yourself. And until you can see each character from a bird's eye view and a neutral stance, and see the good and the bad and how they relate, then you're able to see how certain people relate in society, and you're able to see the forces that come into play in society as well. And you're also able to see that a lot of people react based on the pain they feel in their lives, and they might overreact, and that might cause a little more chaos than it could cause if they were more neutral and loving. So going deeper, I want to do a quick analysis on One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So for those of you who aren't too familiar with it, I would probably Wikipedia it really quick. But basically there was this one guy played by Jack Nicholson who escaped, or not escaped, but who got out of his work in a low-level prison because he didn't want to do the work and the farm. He said, I'm crazy, admit me to the mental hospital. And it turned out he wanted to watch the World Series, but the nurse in charge, who's very rules-based, she said, it depends on everyone else. There's some people here that if you disrupt the schedule, it throws them off balance. And that is because human beings, they need certainty in their lives, some people more than others. For instance, if you look at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, human beings need food, shelter, a sense of belonging first in order to feel stable and secure, and that's the need for certainty. So on the other hand, people also need, once they're certain, they start to get bored, right? Once you're secure in everything you have, some people are going to want to have variety in their lives, so uncertainty. So what Jack Nicholson's character did was introduce a lot of uncertainty, but the problem was there are people who are very, very certainty driven, and that's what the nurse was getting towards, but she didn't know it. She is a very, very certainty driven person. I'm scratching my nose a lot because I had lunch with like a lot of spices, and it totally cleared out my system, like I have no allergies. It was great, but I still feeling like the spiciness. So getting back to certainty and variety, Jack Nicholson's character infused a lot of variety, but he didn't do it for the good of all. He did it for the good of himself because he wanted to watch the World Series. It's all about him. If you look at his life in the movie, it's all about him. But he kind of realizes towards the end that he can help other people. A lot of people, well, let me step back. This is kind of going to be one of my long-winded rants, analysis on a movie or a book. So I want to talk about and introduce spiral dynamics really quick. So spiral dynamics is a system of human development that came into play with Claire Graves, among other psychologists, Ken Wilber. And it's basically, I've done this and I've explained this in other videos, but it's basically that human beings evolved up certain levels. And the first level you have when you're born is the beige level, and it's the level of survival. So you're looking for food, shelter, basically. And this is the level of newborns and very, very senile people in their older times of their life where they can't, they lose a lot of their capacities. And like certain mentally ill people or people with disabilities mentally, that all they can do is just try to survive. That occurred when we were babies and also when we're older. And then after that, human beings evolved into tribes where they believed a lot of animism and a lot of magical powers, like there are good and evil spirits around, and they influence the future, basically. And so there were a lot of little nomadic indigenous tribes around. And when the tribes started fighting each other, they realized, okay, they distrusted the other tribes in the world because they thought the world was unsafe. So they would attack other tribes. And from there, it's really easy to get like a psychopathic, power-hungry leader to abscond and take over one of the tribe's power and saying, look, I can destroy everyone, and this very, very self-centered person like me. And you can see this in those rock musicians, super rock stars that just destroy the hotel rooms, destroy everything. It's all about me. Everyone bow down to me. Like power hungry. It's called the Power God Red stage. And then after that, people start getting tired of being under a tyranny and a dictatorship and bullied and killed. They start to build a sense of morality and a sense of there's something more to life than just this life. Maybe it's an afterlife, and that's when religion comes. The fundamentalist religions come, and it's more of a collective mindset, and they are establishing laws, morality, for society to grow and evolve, and civilizations to come up. And so that's when the first civilizations come in. And then after that, after people get kind of safe, the limitations of the blue stage come into play, and that is, a lot of rules and structure. People get tired of following the rules, and they want to rebel again and go into more an individualistic stage as well. But this time it's the orange stage, and it's the realm of science. And that's when science comes into play, and science says, okay, this is what we know, these are atoms, this is how they work. And then we're able to disprove a lot of the kind of law and order type morality things. And then people become atheists in this time, because so there's different stages of religion and spirituality. There's the fundamentalist, rules-oriented, this is this, only my civilization is right. It's very ethnocentric. And then there's spirituality that goes beyond that. But I'll get into that in different stages. And basically when you enter the orange stage is the meritocracy. And the orange stage cares a little bit more about people than the red stage. The red stage was all, oh, me, whatever benefits me. And then the blue stage is all like what benefits the group and collective morality and rules and consequences and afterlife. And then the orange stage is meritocracy, personal development, making lots of money, personal freedom is really big in the orange stage. And then after orange comes green, and that's kind of where all of the social justice warriors are, equality for all, peace on earth, very united. It's also very collectivist again. The limitations of orange is that corporate greed it's not for the good of all. And so they're saying banish all hierarchies, while orange was a meritocracy, green is all like banish hierarchies, everyone is equal. But then the limitations of green is that it's too idealistic. It's really hard for a decision to be made and progress to be made if everyone has to be involved in the decision. There's always going to be gridlock. And also green is very, very intolerant of perceived intolerance, because it's from their perception that something is intolerant, and they're on it, they're on it. And then after people realize the limitations of green, they move up to yellow, and yellow is the first stage in tier 2 thinking, where we realize that there are all these different types of people and all these different levels, and they're all managing life based on the perception that they have, which is based on the level that they are in. And it's also, of course, this is only one system. There's many, many systems in play, like the systems of human needs, like the need for certainty versus the need of variety, the need for feeling significant with your life versus the need for connecting with people and getting love, and also the need for contribution. And these are higher levels. When you reach a certain level, you start to think of, I don't feel good unless I'm contributing something to people. I feel great when I give, or of my knowledge, my time, and my talents to people, help people grow. And also there's a need for growth. I'm highly motivated by intellectual growth, so that's why I'm studying all of these types of things. And I'm also very highly motivated in sharing what I know. So this is what I know. So that's just a brief overview of spiral dynamics and how certain stages get you certain perceptions in life. And this video is all about perception. So let's get back to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So most people in the world, in the whole world, not just the Western world, are in stage blue or orange. And if you're looking at One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with an orange perspective, you're going to see the blue nurse, Mildred Ratched, who is in charge of the mental institution and enforcing all the rules. You're going to see her as brainwashing people into thinking exactly how she wants to think, and that's really kind of what happens in blue. You have a certain set of morality, you have law and order, and everyone has to fall in within these boundaries. Blue is all about keeping you in these boundaries for a high level of certainty. So after being in a stage of blue, you open up into orange, and you're also very, very certainty driven as well, but you're also significance and growth driven. And most people watching it are going to see from an orange perspective that Jack Nicholson's character is trying to liberate the people from blue regime. But the blue people probably see it as, okay, Jack Nicholson's character is an anarchist that comes in and tries to enforce whatever he wants and enforce chaos. What I'm trying to say from a yellow perspective is that your perceptions of the event does not mean it's not the whole story. There's so many other perspectives, so many other perspectives. So Jack Nicholson's character, he brought in prostitutes. I mean, he was an all-in angel. He brought in prostitutes. He brought in alcohol. This is actually, from a green perspective, not very healing towards the people inside, because if you're dulling your senses with alcohol, you're not getting in touch with your true nature, your true self. So that's from a green perspective. From a yellow perspective, well, this is what I'm seeing it. I'm seeing that most people think that that movie is all about break free from brainwashing society and all of that. And a lot of people saw Jack Nicholson's character as a martyr. But the fact is, he did some bad things. He tried to kill the nurse because he thought the nurse had contributed to one of his friends' suicide. And he was very, very self-centered. He wanted to watch the World Series. It's all about him. Coming from a yellow perspective, what I would have done if I were the nurse is I would have said, look, I see you want to watch the World Series. It gives you a lot of pleasure. But inside I'm thinking, he's all about himself. He's so egocentric. He only cares about what he wants. I would say, look, in order for you to watch the World Series, which you can do, and we don't have to disrupt the schedule of everyone, I'll just put it up on the TV here, is that you need to do a kind deed to 5 people, and I need to see it. Like, you need to report back to me what you did and what happened and what you learned from it. Then we'll turn on the World Series. Because in those kind acts and those giving to others, he will move up and evolve, and he will learn new things about himself. And we see that he has a lot of talent. He's a very good independent thinker. What if we involved him in some of the things, like get some good ideas on problems we're having? What if we invited him to, give us ideas on how others can grow, not just him? He's very, very self-centered, and that's why he's very destructive. And so he moves from red to orange. A lot of times the levels kind of connect because they swing from one end to the other. Like, one is very collective oriented and one of them is very personal oriented. So red, where he's at a lot, and then he moves to orange, which is very meritocracy, freeing everybody. Everybody does their own thing and is all for themselves. Freedom. Orange is all about freedom. So a lot of people that watch this from an orange stage are going to think, oh, freedom, escape the mental institution. But there's a reason that mental institution exists. Just like there's a reason the blue stage existed. Without the blue stage, humanity wouldn't evolve to orange. We wouldn't have this meritocracy if we didn't have the blue stage there. So it's very, very good. It's good for society, and the orange stage is really good. We wouldn't have the green stage without people going all about freedom and profitability and stuff. We wouldn't bump into the limitation of overuse of profitability and corporate greed and all of that, and selfishness. But orange is a little more caring of others than red. Red will just topple everything down, destroy everything, only for their own good. But we needed red to get out of the tribal mentality of the world being a dangerous place and all these tribes killing us all and everything like that. We needed red. But thankfully, red did not hang around so well because we moved past that because people don't like being killed. So, and getting back to the movie, different perspectives. So there was a young man who really, really wanted love. And he got it from prostitutes. And he had a stutter, and he always wanted to commit suicide because he felt not loved. So what Jack Nicholson's character did was he brought a prostitute and encouraged them to go to the room together. And when the nurse came in the next day, found the whole hospital in ruin because it's full of, alcohol bottles and trash and everything, and people drunk and everywhere, hungover. She got back to the hospital. She found that boy in bed with a prostitute. Well, from her Blue perspective, she did exactly what Blue does, and she brought him out and shamed him in front of everyone and said, "Don't you feel ashamed for what you did, for sleeping with a prostitute?" Well, it turned out his stutter came back, because at first he was confident, and his stutter came back, and then he ended up committing suicide because she threatened to tell his mother. Okay, that's very, very Blue, because Blue is all about hierarchy, right? So he's like, okay, mother is higher, and this is going to stop him. Hierarchy. But now we know that, one, public shaming does more harm than good. You should always praise publicly and criticize in private, or give negative feedback in private. And two, the nurse didn't acknowledge his confidence coming back. A more healthy way of dealing with it would be to take him aside privately and say, "Look, there, you slept with a prostitute and you're looking for love. Do you think that this will give you love in the long term, even if you feel confident now?" And allow him to assess how he is, and what his goals are and how he is to get there. And then you could say, what do you think will happen with your relationship with women in the future? If you continue to go down this road of prostitution, are you ever going to get that real human love that you crave? Allow him to figure it out himself, instead of shaming him. That's a very yellow way of doing it. It's not making them feel bad. It's just realizing that certain perceptions of life based on your experiences will cloud how you interact with people. And on the other side, we have this tall man in the movie called Chief, and he's perceived to be deaf and mute. But Jack Nicholson's character gained his trust and realized that he was not deaf and mute. But he shared his story to Jack Nicholson's character, and he said, "Oh, my father was killed. It's in this hospital, and he was broken by this hospital system. His whole soul is just, crushed, and he died." Well, that's quite horrible, and you can understand why this character was too scared to be himself. And so when Jack Nicholson's character ended up getting a lobotomy, he tried to kill the nurse because, he thought that the nurse was evil and enforcing some kind of evil regime that was rigged, right? But what he failed to notice was that each level of consciousness is needed, and sometimes you need that system to realize limitations and move up from it. Like religion really, really quelled a lot of violence in the past. There's, of course, a lot of history of religions trying to conquer other religions, but that's another characteristic of Blue, because each person in the Blue stage think that their religion, their civilization is better and right than all the rest. So they try to conquer, but they also imposed some rules, and they created the first civilizations, because before we just had nomadic tribes. And they created the first organized civilizations and got people to think of the afterlife and the consequences of their actions. So there was a place for this. There was a place for fundamental religions. But then, of course, people wanted to get their freedom again, and then they realized that, science and business and Wall Street came about, like, I'm controlling my own destiny, I can get all of this. And then that's where green came in. So I know I've already explained that, but if we see it from Blue's perspective, whatever that nurse did was consistent with her perspective. And what that chief did, the tall guy, he ended up murdering Jack Nicholson's character when he got lobotomized, to take out that fire inside of him that was, there to disrupt the whole system. He killed him because he thought, okay, his father, he saw his father's soul get taken away from him by the system. And so he wanted to, from his perspective, it was the right thing to do. But other people's perspectives that didn't have that past would not have reacted the same way. Perhaps you come from a belief that all murder is bad. You will not murder this guy. So, it's just perspective. So I think the key is to understand where people are coming from, because when we don't understand where people are coming from, and we don't understand our perspective, where we are on the scale, where we're coming from, then a lot of what's happening in the world is going to seem very chaotic. And in fact, if we become very intolerant, and just think our way is right, without understanding the level of development psychologically, socially, spiritually that people are in, there's just going to be a lot of fighting in the world. But the good news is, you need to go through every stage before you can advance. So even if you hate blue so much, you need to go through it and learn the lessons before you can evolve to orange. If you're orange, you need to be a hippie before you can evolve to yellow. So I hope this helped you guys understand life a little bit better, and why you do the things you do, and how your perceptions color the view you have in the world, and how other people's perceptions also color how they behave in the world. So with that, I will love you and leave you, and see you in the next video.